as well.
Awesome.
So, okay. Okay, let's start, right?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So, my name is Daniel, and as you know me, this is another episode from Playa Rocky. That's the name of my project. And today I have a pleasure to be with Elizabeth Harris. It's my invited from today, my guest for today. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me today, Danielle.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
I'm super excited.
It's a pleasure to have you here in my podcast. So, well, sometimes, this is an adventure. And it's a big pleasure to have you here. It's great to that you stay here. And I want to let you introduce yourself to the people, know a little bit about what you do and why you are here, because this is kind of a podcast with several subjects. So can you introduce a little bit yourself, because I will be short if I do that.
Yeah, of course. Well, hey everyone, I'm Liz Harris, and I am a career coach and work mainly with startup employees. So I've been a digital nomad for the past, I want to say 3 years, and I travel and work for myself, and I'm here today because I live part-time in Germany and I needed some sun, so I decided to come to Playa del Carmen, met Danielle, and he told me all about his podcast and entrepreneurship, and I thought hey, this could be a really cool conversation, and I really wanted to chat more about it with him.
Thank you so much. I mean, for me, it's a really, really grateful for me. I feel very grateful because, well, the people that follow me know then, or they will realize that this is my first podcast in English. So I ask a little bit of patience about it. But talking about Germany, we start to talk about that, and I didn't ask more about that. So what exactly you do in Germany? So do you have an office in Germany to develop all this talent, career coach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for Germany, I actually can work from anywhere. So it really just depends on, what's exciting at the moment. And I decided over the summer to go to Germany because it's really close by some other countries that I wanted to travel. And then also because I have friends there. So it's a little bit less related to my work, but also Germany and Berlin in particular has the largest number of startup companies in Europe. And so it made it very easy for me to find clients there versus going somewhere like Spain. So it's more so just my love for Berlin. That's how I usually pick where I go next.
Wow, that's very interesting. Actually, well, I had the pleasure as well to meet a couple of German tourists. And they are very disciplined. They are very to the point. Actually, it's hilarious because one day that I met one, I asked him about the punctuality in Germany, and he said to me, in Germany, if you get late 3 times, you're shit. You are not worthy enough for any job. So when I heard that, I fuck. Because I touched this point because I used to in Mexico. I come from Mexico City.
Oh, nice.
I didn't tell you this before. I come from Mexico City, and Mexico City is a very chaotic city. So usually it's not only me, my friends, and because the chaos, usually we tend to be not punctual person, to be in the place at the right time. And when this German guy told me this, I said, fuck. I mean, cold water bucket in my head. So it's very interesting that about the Germany is the country in Europe, right? Is in the whole world or just in Europe?
Yeah, so as for startups?
For startups.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's Berlin in particular has like the largest startup scene in all of Europe. But I would say if it's all of the world, it would be like Silicon Valley, in the US. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Silicon Valley is like the OG, the most famous startup tracker. Yeah. So, well, I want to dig a little bit more in this topic because it's for me it's interesting. Every topic is interesting for me because I'm very curious. But I would like to ask you, what exactly is a startup and what elements must have a project to be considered as a startup?
Yeah. So in many ways, almost anything can be a startup. So a startup is essentially a business. It's an entrepreneurial effort that has, one or more founders. And I think what really makes a startup, different from a small business is that normally it is kind of creating a service or a product that's going to solve some type of problem or pain point for businesses or consumers. And then it's also usually either funded just like through crowdsourcing, or it's funded through a venture firm or like a VC firm, which basically are investors that come together and say, hey, this is a really good idea. I love your podcast idea. I'm going to give you $1 million. And then someone else gives you $1 million. And then you say, great, I have a startup with the technology and I'm going to build this and turn it into profit.
Yeah, so I ask you this, and it's very interesting that you touched this point because I researched a little bit, and there is a several kind of investors, sort of investors. For example, like angel investors, right? Like seed investors, and first round, second round, or B round. I think it's going by letter or by letter, right? So okay, but I researched a little bit, and there is other kind of startups. I don't know if it's a different kind, but the bootstrapping startups and the creepy startups. So you say a startup is a company or a project that is being developed to solve a necessity or solve any product. Then the market recurs, right? So I'm asking you this because why, or as you said, almost any project can be considered a startup, right? How you can jump to this level? I'm asking you this from a personal perspective because I don't know if this is a startup. I don't know because what I'm doing with this is I'm a purpose driver, right? I wanted the people come to Mexico and the other people that I can touch or reach have a great time and they improve their time having good experiences. And also the other part of my project that I didn't tell you about, I'm a writer. Right, so I want to stimulate the curiosity about read. So with histories, with this kind of experiences, you can see the all things that I come through to record this. So. Yeah, and sometimes the behind of that, I have a lot of experiences or histories that I've been typing. So I want to stimulate. That's my goal, right? Or my purpose. Yeah. So I'm going far from my point. But how we can jump to this to get angel investors or seed rounds for investments? How we can improve a simple project like this to that level?
Yeah, so I think this is where a lot of the distinction between a small business or entrepreneurial business, where for me, I have a one-person show and I'm an entrepreneur versus a business and a startup where there's many different people and elements. And I think another piece that really helps when it comes to getting funding is that you need to create a service or a product that is, unique enough that it's going to solve a problem in the market, and then it's going to scale. So it needs to be seen as, something that is going to make a lot of money, or it's something that is going to be able to grow beyond, 10 customers or 100 customers or 1,000 customers. And that's what investors see. They say, hey, this money that I give you, 1 million, it's going to turn into, 50 million for me in 10 years. And so you need to have a viable business plan that will take it that way. And that will be what we consider like scalable, right? So how are you going to create revenue over time in a market that really needs it? And so that's what investors look for.
Okay, so what I can see is the main factor to become to raise investment is be scalable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the most important factors, right?
Yeah. I would say like a viable product that, with these firms, and I'll be honest, I'm not, someone who's fundraised before, and I know a bit about like the VC side of the world, but essentially you want to make sure that the product that you have is, going to solve like a big enough problem where they see it is going to be, basically make a lot of money. Think of Airbnb as an example. You can look at it as one individual who rents out their apartment or they rent out a house, and that's like very, very small, right? Like probably wouldn't consider that a startup. You would consider that like entrepreneurship. But once you add that technological element to it and you make it scalable, so not only that one person is renting out their house or apartment, but you're able to do it for thousands of people. And instead of being the one person, the entrepreneur who's doing everything, you're building the system that does that for you. And so that turns it into a scalable business because it can go from one individual to millions or thousands of individuals, and they're all working separately from that one founder, that one entrepreneur who started it. So that could be like one way that you can distinguish those things.
Okay, it's very interesting that because I'm making my comparisons in my head about what I'm doing, and I would like to. That's one of my points, be scalable, but this conversation helped me to, because in the startups, your objectives change probably 4 or 5 times per day. Yeah,
exactly. Per day, that's a good one.
Yeah, so it's very changing, and also in this moment, everything is changing very fast.
Yes.
And also, I want to I would like to ask you. This is a more personal question. Why you decide to dedicate yourself to this? Why you decide to develop talent for startups?
Yeah, so before I worked in startups, I worked in education, and so I love helping people. And so when I worked in education, that was helping them learn more, discover about themselves, those types of things. And as I moved into startups, it was really helping them connect with their next position, help them make more money, help them be happier with the work that they're doing. And then I also like to build businesses, which is something that I learned by working in startups. I love the business component of everything, even though I may not work on the business side, but understanding, growth, revenue, marketing, sales, all of those things are super interesting. And so I found that, it pays off in more ways than one. And so I really love it.
Yeah, well, it's very funny because I study in the Instituto Politécnico Nacional. It's one of the universities in Mexico. It's one of the biggest, and I think it's one of the best. And I studied all those things. The name of my career were commercial relationships. So in this career, show me all the elements that a company has to consider and learn how to build a company.
Right.
So it's very funny that you say this because for me right now, I'm having like a deja vu because I started this project because I want to be part of that. But, you know, for things of the life or, you know, like God, destiny or whatever, I'm starting this project and I have to retake all those things. I'm telling you this because I think most people, the entrepreneur people mainly talking about, they want to help. And what I want to do with this, or my point with all this argument, is that what I want to stimulate is more than their pockets or their, I don't want to say greedy, but their, you know, their, more than the economy. I want to stimulate like more like something inside from them to make them, or probably I sound like a dreamer, but make them a little bit more, I don't know how to say this.
Maybe inspired, or
exactly.
Yeah.
That word is very like, I think it's pretentious because if you try to inspire someone else, I think you are trying to guide someone, and I don't want to guide anyone. I want to move yourself. I want to move something inside of you that make you think that what you really want. If your life is worthy, if you are, you know, if you're living the life that you want to live, and also create more aware people.
Yeah.
So that's like my main goal, like my big dream, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing this because, I already tell you. But I want to pass to the next question that I have for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, what's the process that you use to train talent for startups? How do you train these people? Could you describe your method, or do you have a process, or is different with each person? How?
Yeah, so it's different for each person because everyone has their own like unique challenges or strengths that they come with. And so I usually spend, you know, some time just understanding, okay, what are their goals? What has stopped them from going there? And just really kind of giving them a chance to open up to me. People open up rather quickly when they're frustrated and they need help for something. And the relationship that we have, it's very much built on trust and just being like honest with each other and kind of helping each other. And so I usually start with that. And then from understanding their goals, I can help diagnose problems that they're having, and then I really just coach them to understand like how to solve some of those problems. I don't think of myself as solving problems for people, but I think of myself more as like a sounding board. It's if they have a problem or a question and I can answer it and I can give them more insight and like advice into startups, into their careers, then they can take that information and they can make adjustments that they need for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, like this is like a market process. I mean, like I don't want to do that comparison, that analogy, but yeah, it sounds like every time. I mean, like I do this personally as well. I do that personally as well. Sorry, and it's very interesting. And I was curious about this because I understand that, for example, every startup is very different from one from each other, and also the people who have to apply to different startups must have different kind of personality, skills, profile, like like in a normal job. So I want to ask you, what's the general description that an applicant must have to work in the startup? Yeah,
well, I think you hinted on it earlier today when you basically said things are constantly changing all the time, 4 or 5 times a day. Not that often, but it changes rather quickly. So it needs to be someone who adapts well to change. I would say someone who can think on their feet. When you go into a startup, and we really think of startups as just really fast scaling businesses, right? But there's a lot of things that need to be done. So sometimes you may be hired for marketing, but you need to do something that's, outside your job. So being able to flex to these different types of work. And then I would say just like the ability to learn rather quickly, especially if it's your first time at a startup. Like you mentioned, they're all different. They all have, their own markets, their own types of products. And so being able to learn all of that and take action quickly, I find are like universal skills for people who are successful at startups.
I think that's, well, I completely agree with it, because with this project, one of the things that I like to me from these things, from this project, is that this tastes my limits.
Yeah.
What I can do, what I know, and I have daily doing something or learning something to keep this on board. On board. Like, keep tracking. So I was wondering, how I ask this, if it's necessary to have a specific skill to belong to, or to be part of some startup. And you already answered me that. You already say that you have constantly in learning and be flexible. And I mean, I really feel right now I'm feeling like a startup. How I can call to one person who create a startup? A founder.
A founder, yeah.
Well, I feel like a founder.
Well, maybe it's because you are a founder, you're creating something.
For me, it's funny because I see myself in retrospective. It's a good word, retrospective.
Yeah, in retrospect.
In retrospect. And I never thought that I will become this.
No.
So for me, that's what I'm laughing. I'm laughing for myself, and I would like to. In some point, for sure, you will know a little bit more about my background.
Yeah.
But I never thought to become this. So I never thought about it. So it's very interesting, the skills that you have to develop project. But so I want to ask you, you already asked this question, and I'm curious, how do you prepare a person to adapt to this, to be flexible, to be changed from one area, from marketing, and then for probably finance? How do you prepare a person in these startups to be that flexible?
Yeah, so honestly, you don't. I think some people are good at being flexible and some are not. And I think that is one of the key characteristics of who's successful in a startup. But some things you can't prepare people for, right? Like not everyone is going to be interested in becoming an entrepreneur. And so you can't kind of train anyone to get to that point. And so I think it's less about training people to fit a certain mold and more about giving them the tools that they need so that they can, really lean into what they're good at already.
I have a question. So with this person, whatever person, they already get the job, but he's those kind of person that he is not very flexible. You have to keep coaching it, do you have after to get the job, are you still working with them?
Yeah, so it depends. People usually come to me when they have a very specific problem. So say if that problem would be that their work environment is really difficult, then we would break it down and say, okay, well, what about your current role are you not liking? What are the top 3 feelings you have when you go to work? If they say, oh, everything is chaotic, things are moving too quickly. And then we start breaking that down, right? It's okay, why are things chaotic? Why is this difficult for you, right? And then you would start really, really narrowing down on exactly what the problem is. And then you would be able to help diagnose and say, at the end of the day, it's this is the environment of startups, and like maybe you know, can't predict what's going to happen, but you can adjust the way that you react to it, right? So at the end of the day, we're not solving every problem, but we're giving them the tools so that they can help solve them for themselves, right?
To manage.
Yeah. So it's in some ways, I mean, I don't want to say that I'm a therapist in any way, but in some ways, you know, people come to me and they're like, hey, I have this career problem, Liz. And I'm like, we're going to talk about it, right? And we're going to help you realize certain things about it. And then you take that with you, and that will help you make your next decision. And so sometimes it's, you know, these types of problems, or problems they have with their manager, or problems they have with making more money and having those, you know, conversations around compensation. And so we give you the tools and we talk about it, but at the end of the day, it really depends on that person. You can't force someone to be someone that they're not.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that will be a great idea for a startup psychologists, for, you know, for the startup workers.
Well, let's talk to me in 1 year and we'll see where I am. We'll see if I can get funding.
Definitely. Well, because it sounds like a joke, but it's a problem.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I will tell you again from my personal perspective, because I have to manage the stress to, you know, to be done with the deadlines. Mm-hmm. If I don't reach the deadline, or if I don't complete my task before the deadline, I feel so bad, and I'm constantly struggling with it. And you know, I mean, I do something to realize that, but this is between us.
And everyone watching.
Yeah, I think I have to take therapy for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because my life is quite complicated. It's quite complicated, or it's more complicated since I started this project.
Yeah.
Because, you know, depression, the stress, and you know, my own is for myself. Anyone is pushing me. Yeah. I'm pushing myself.
Yeah.
But in all this journey, I feel like, fuck, I would like to, you know, have someone to talk about these things, because not everyone understands, and you have to be flexible, and you have to, you know, have all those skills to develop, or to be smart enough, or to be, you know, to keep learning.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely it sounds funny for me, but I think it will be a great idea for business.
Well, I think until that business is made, like, connecting with other entrepreneurs is super helpful. I mean, like you said, you never thought that you would create this project, and I didn't think that I would work for myself until this year. And as I came up with the idea, I started talking to friends who worked on their own projects and their own businesses. And every time I talked to them, I would share something, and I would be like, "Oh, well, what do you think?" And they'd say, "Liz, just do it." And then when I started working on it, and I was like trying to figure out, okay, what are my products? What are my offerings? How much do I charge? All these things. I had three particular friends that I would send a text to, a voice note to. They would send me their business plan. They would coach me through it and just give me, you know, a little bit more information. And that honestly helped me get to the point where I was like, okay, I feel like I'm going to set up my website. I feel like I'm going to set my prices. Oh my God, I have my first client. Oh my gosh, now I'm, you know, getting referred. What do I do for this? Now I'm sending out my newsletter, and now I have these things. I have all of this, you know, different like videos that are going like viral on LinkedIn. And so like those are the types of things you just don't know what to do, and you have these small problems. But having a few friends that are entrepreneurs who have done it before or struggling with the same things are going to really help you realize that, like, okay, this is fine. This is just, you're doing something new. You're going to suck at whatever you do for the first time, maybe the first 5 times, but you're going to learn and you're going to get better. And those problems you had 6 months ago are silly compared to now you have new problems, right? But you've gotten over them and you're going to get over them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, like, actually the name of this project is Dale Playa Rocky. There is no way to translate it. It's a play words. Dale Playa, it means like just do it, like press press the button play,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that'll play in Spanish.
Yeah, yeah.
And Rocky, I has been inspired by the movie.
Yeah.
Because Rocky was he was nobody.
Uh-huh.
He was like, you know, like I think, I don't know how to express this, but he was working for a gangster.
Yeah.
And he just started to train, to fight, and then he started to, you know, he had an opportunity, and
Yeah.
then he did, you know, the movie.
Yeah,
right?
a great movie.
Yeah. But I took it as reference because it involved physical training,
Yeah.
mental training,
Yeah.
psychological training.
Yeah.
So all those elements,
Huh?
I took it from the movie because they are part of the trauma of
Yeah.
the drama of the movie, and
Yeah.
is usual. I felt that I was going through the same thing.
Yeah.
As you said, set up your website, set up your prices, set up all the things that you will charge or you will work with other person to, well, all those aspects from a business. Really, I mean, I'm experiencing this right now. I'm start to have this experience. It opens your mind. It opens your perspective. Well, I'm feeling like in that way because just do it. I'd be afraid to try this, and
Yeah.
only God knows how many times I felt it.
Yeah.
I felt before to this, and I'm not saying that I would not fail with this.
Yeah.
But at least right now I have more idea, or I have more experience about how I feel more close from the life than I want to live.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's I completely understand that. Well, I mean, I'm going through that process. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for share to share that. So I want to also ask you. Well, right now, I know my English level is not the best, but I want to talk a little bit about culture. So how do you think then the culture impact in environment of a startup? Because as you said, you are working in Germany, or well, most of your customers are in Germany, but the language, do you speak Germany?
So I have the majority of my customers are actually in the US.
So your customers go to Germany to the startups?
No.
Or let me get it.
So the customers that I have, my clients are startup employees, and so I basically meet with people who are just, who are open to having these conversations and need help. And it just so happens to be that the largest number of employees are in the US, and that's where all of my experience working at startups was. And then there's also folks in Germany and Berlin. And so I've worked with both groups, but because there's so many more clients to be had in the US, that's the majority of my clients. And it's interesting that you mentioned culture, because it's more of a culture in the US to pay for my services than it is in Germany. And so that's something that I had to, learn a little bit more too, is that like, hey, the services and my prices, like they're very geared towards Americans and Canadians, and probably are less geared towards other people, but that's something that I had to learn as I've been offering my services.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm able to have this conversation because, well, I learned by myself. Well, some friends help me to practice English, but definitely I ask you this because the teamwork in a startup is like determinant. It's like very, very important. So even I've been working with a friend right now. We are not he's not here, but even we were Mexican. We were from different cultures. And I will put other factor on the table. Then is also the generation. Because for example, if your co-worker is younger than you, he have other ideas very different. Even probably with 5 or 6 years of difference, they have a different mindset. So I'm curious about this point about the culture. How you manage that, but you already answered me that.
Yeah, well, I think also, I think it depends on your perspective, right? Like, it can be seen as a challenge to have people of different generations and different like values, or it could be seen as, a plus to have those, because maybe the way that someone who is, 25 would solve a problem is going to be much different from someone who's 35 or 40 who has seen the problem solved before, right? And so like that could be a plus or a minus, just depending on the way you look at it. And I think that it's helpful, especially in startups. One thing that I have seen many times is they get a lot of like young people together who have never built anything to scale or who have never solved a very simple problem before. And so it's helpful to have people who have done it before. And the same way it might be helpful for, someone who's been an entrepreneur 3 or 4 times or a CEO 3 or 4 times to come in and fix a company and make it better. So I think it takes both kinds of people. And I like to just think of it as like a bonus and less as like a negative.
It's very interesting. Yeah, and I agree. It's depend of the perspective, definitely. Because just to close this topic, when you are fresh, when you didn't do that before, you have you feel, I would say in this way, hungry. You have that. You want to create it. Yeah. But once that you create it, like you said, okay, I already did it, and probably, as you said, it could be more or less, depend of the person. Yeah. But probably the experience could make him better or could make him worse. Right. So, but, could you tell me what is the main motivation that the people have, or to have to belong to these startups? Why is the reason? Because these numbers are very popular. I researched it a little bit in Google. I don't remember the sources, the source like specifically, but the 90% of the startups they've just failed. And why right now the people want to work in a startup instead of a solid company?
Yeah. So I could probably spend an hour talking about this alone, but I'll try to be as brief as possible. So there's a lot of reasons why people join startups. One, if they are looking to gain skills, startups are more likely to hire people who are, like you said, hungry and who are, maybe just more energetic and open to trying a lot of different roles. So you're more likely to get hired by a startup if you want to break into tech. Another reason, if you already have a bit of experience, is the payoff. So people realistically, like, they join startups with the hope that that company is going to go from a privately owned company to a public company, and is going to be publicly traded in the stock market. And so if you're an early employee of those, you are going to get a huge payout. It doesn't happen all the time. As you said, 10% that situation happens, but that is a very real situation that people have experienced at all of the big tech companies you can think of. And so everyone wants to be part of that next company that goes public for that payoff. And then I would say a third reason why people join startups is the environment. They love to build. When I was working for my last startup, I would get messages from Facebook, from Google, and they'd be like, "Hey, Liz, come here and, become, a recruiting manager at these companies." And I'm like, these companies are like 10,000 people. It sounds so boring. I want to be able to own what I do and make my own decisions and build what I think is what we need, and have autonomy. And I know if I went to a big company, I wouldn't have that, right? I'd be like one person and, a sea of other people. But if I'm at this smaller company, I have more control. I can be more creative with how I solve problems because I'm seen as the subject matter expert. So those are some of the reasons that I see for people joining startups. And I would say probably I would agree with all of those for myself personally. So there could be a few other things that I'm leaving out, but I think they're just like interesting environments to work in where you can solve a lot of interesting problems. You can be creative and you can have a lot of ownership.
Yeah, well, is very interesting, and the factor that I can identify is the freedom.
Yeah.
The freedom.
Yeah.
And I would sound poetic, because having on mind then the 90% of the startups failed. I think the people that they are looking for that works. They prefer die free than die into a box.
Yeah. And it's interesting because even if the startup fails, like, you still get paid. You still build that experience. You're still building that product. It just means it doesn't turn into Google or Apple, right? Or like a big company. It just means that it doesn't become publicly traded or isn't acquired. It doesn't mean that you didn't still create really great things that you can't take to the next startup or the next big company. It just means for that time and period, that company didn't, become a $10 billion company. So, failing at a startup is actually like one of the, I think, best things that you can do. You're going to try a lot of things. You're going to fail. It's similar to entrepreneurship. You learn how to fail. I learned how to fail so much at startups, but if it happens, I just get back up and do something different, right? And so you just kind of learn to that cycle. A failure becomes much less of like a taboo.
Yeah, like you become more resilient.
Resilient, yeah.
Resilient.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also I think is try to change something in a big company is very complicated.
Yeah.
And for otherwise, when the startups usually are small, work with 10 people is pretty easy to create a new things or do changes. And I think that's, I mean, as I'm telling you, I'm looking out of this through my own experience.
Right.
And as I told you, I've been working with a friend, but even it was taking a little bit, like, it was easy to try new things, but I realized about it. For example, here my job, it's hard to create new things. Well, okay. So now for close this interesting conversation, I want to ask you one more thing.
Oh, I'm worried.
Why you are worried?
I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm like, what's this one last thing?
This
is where the hard question comes in.
I think, to be honest, the hardest question was the last question.
Oh, okay.
About the 90%. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel nervous because I'm doing this in another language and I don't want to sound, like, you know what I mean? I don't want to
You sound great, honestly. This is like the first of many podcasts in English that you will do.
Yeah, for sure. I will keep practicing, but in the process, I will polish my English.
Yeah.
Right? So I would like to ask you, what is your opinion or prediction about the following years regarding the labor field, about the, how the employees, how the work will become.
Yeah.
So would you tell me, or would you tell us some advice, or based on your experience, how you think that this gonna evolve in the next probably 5 years?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. I wouldn't begin to think that I would know how things will evolve. I'm wondering that myself, honestly. But I think some lessons that we can look across and say that we've seen in the past 10, 20 years is that, people kind of creating their own businesses or potentially having multiple, streams of revenue, that is extremely popular. I will also say, having to constantly learn new processes, new technologies. Like this is, you know, a world where everyone is constantly learning new things, right? With my parents, they had, you know, one job that they worked and they retired from. That is not the reality that we have today. And so that means that people are going to change careers, they're going to change jobs, and they need to be able to learn quickly and adapt. And, you know, whether that means by having your own business, or if it means being able to do, you know, 2 or 3 functions in a given company, those are things that people can look forward to, is that, you know, change is the new normal. So people should do their best to upskill, learn new things, because they're probably not going to be doing one thing for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with it. And, you know, doing this project, I'm realizing about it.
Yeah.
I'm practicing.
Yeah.
Actually, I will tell you something between us. I've been thinking, or I mean, like, I will consider it to apply for a startup.
Awesome.
Because right now I feel like I have the skills, and I'm curious enough, and I like to learn. But at the same time, for me, it's like I prefer to do this to myself, instead of to do it to someone else.
¿Por qué no los dos?
¿Por qué no los dos? Wow, it's an interesting question. I think it's because the energy. Because I put my energy in this, and I need energy to keep learning, to keep improving myself, to keep a schedule, you know, my routine, daily routine. And in the startup, I worked with a friend once. He was a graphic designer, and I don't know. Well, I think it wasn't a startup, but he was an entrepreneur. So he called me probably at 11 p.m. Oh, I need this, or, you know, out of my times to sleep, or, well, out of my daily routine. And sometimes for me was annoying. Yeah. I don't feel comfortable with it, because I felt like I have to adapt to him. And that's what it's about, startups, right? To adapt. But I prefer adapt my time to my project, to adapt my time to the project to someone else. So I don't know. I must to try and have that experience to realize how it is, right? Because also different startups, different environments, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm doing this because my energy, I'm careful with my energy, and a startup, I think it takes you a lot of energy, focus, and, you know, and the time that you are not working, you want just to release all those things. So I prefer release in this job, and put all my energy in my own project. Yeah. So, well, but this conversation has been super helpful for me, very instructive. Yeah. And Elizabeth, it has been a pleasure to having you here in Playa Rocky. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Would you like to say something else?
Well, because of the theme is just entrepreneurship, I feel like today in many ways, I would say if you have like a goal, a dream, something that you want to do, like get out there and do it. The worst case scenario is that you're going to be in the exact same position that you're in today. So take that risk.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with it. That's why this project is Dale Playa Rocky, as I told you. So, well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
I enjoyed this conversation, and, well, I don't have nothing more to say. And, well, this has been the end of this episode.
Yeah.
As Dr. That's why I use this word, because Dr. Dre, until next episode.
Oh, until next episode. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So see you next, guys.
Yeah.
Next episode. Bye bye.
That was great.
Yeah, that's what I use that word.
You're like, till next episode.
Until next episode.
Okay, that was so much fun.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.